Let's talk to some folks, and this is Julio, or Julio.
Julio, yes.
There we go.
I'm here in Chicago. Congressman Paul, it's always great to speak with you. Just a quick comment. I studied broadcasting in college at Western Illinois University in Macomb, and just to see the lack of journalistic integrity from, small-time bloggers like in Illinois, Warner Todd Hudson calling Ron Paul supporters racist and Jew haters, to Chris Wallace of Fox News to say that if Ron Paul were to win the Iowa caucuses, it would mean nothing. I hope people truly do their own research, turn off the TV, and do their own research on candidates, because it's clear just by the way they've been attacking you, Congressman Paul, that there's no journalistic integrity through the media. Two quick questions. I'll be brief. Number one, in terms of the economic war, the currency war, I'm 22 years old. I'm already investing in physical silver. And I think that I did research on John F. Kennedy's Executive Order 1110. And, I hear when you talk about going back to the gold standard, well, people look at the price of gold per ounce, 12 or 15, 16, over $1,700, silver at $30 an ounce. How quickly can we get our currency back to where it once was by going back to a gold standard?
All right, good.
Okay, you can't do it very quickly, and you can't do it at all unless the people change their minds about what the role of government ought to be. They have to have respect for the Constitution. The law says you can use only gold and silver as legal tender. You cannot maintain the welfare state, and you cannot police the world, because that requires a lot of money, more money than what we have. We can't tax the people to pay for it. Soon, people won't loan us money. Matter of fact, they don't, and that's why we have to print it. So the people's minds and attitudes have to change. That's why I talk so much about the purpose of government as protecting of liberty, but not to do these other things. But if we did these things, and this is where I'm encouraged, because a lot of people are joining me. The young people are recognizing that they're better off if government would be limited. And if under those cases we could restore a gold standard. We did it once after the Civil War. We were off gold from 1861 to 1878, and there was a 3-year transition period from 75 to 78, and it worked. But we weren't running up deficits like this. We weren't printing money. They quit printing the greenbacks. They had greenbacks then, and that's why they had to go off the gold standard. So it can be done, but instead of thinking, can we wave a wand and do it immediately, all I want to do is legalize the Constitution and compete with the paper currency. I think that would take care of itself, because people then would give up on the paper.
This is not a new position for Dr. Paul. He's been saying this for a long time. In fact, I think it was in the 80s you were involved in a gold commission, and you wrote a book, a very fine history on the history of gold and gold currency and real money in this country. It still is a good primer on our own history. Most of us were never taught. It's called, I recommend it highly, it's called A Case for Gold. Little paperback. You can get up there and inform yourself on this. Thank you for your call, sir. This is Sharon. Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning.
Oops, you got to put him back on. I think we got a little bit of feedback. That's all right. We got it. All right, there we go. Go ahead, Sharon.
Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say, as an African-American woman who has been voting with the Democrats, that I am so happy to hear a candidate address the issues that are really important to the majority of the country. We should not be policing the world when we're going broke. And the Federal Reserve Bank should be reined in. And I'm so happy to have a candidate who is speaking to these particular issues in addition to other ones. So I just want to say that I love you, Ron Paul. And if Ron Paul is the candidate for the Republicans, I'm switching my vote.
All right. Hey, thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it.
This is an important point, because she brings up the subject of the spending and the overseas spending and the wars. And sometimes on our debates, they'll say, we're going to discuss foreign policy but not economics, or we're going to talk about economics, not foreign policy. But the truth is they have to be connected, because even Mises, the great Austrian economist, said war is a real detriment and always drains and hurts the economy. So people who say sometimes that they agree with me on economic issues but not foreign policy don't quite understand economics, and they don't understand foreign policy. The foreign policy is connected. It's the excessive spending. If every penny comes out of the economy. And I make the immediate point by saying, if we could just bring back our troops, just think of them spending all that money here versus spending it in Germany and Japan and Korea. That could give us a little economic boost. But the policies do have to be changed. And we have accumulated over $4 trillion worth of debt in these last 10 years on wars that I firmly believe have not served our interest in one way.
We need to take a short time out. We're broadcasting live with a simulcast with C-SPAN here this morning. I'm Jan Mickelson. As you're tuning in here this morning, you're watching Congressman Ron Paul, who's been a frequent guest in this election cycle. As you can detect, we pretty much have these similar conversations because we share a common affinity for honest currency and a limited government philosophy. That used to define what the Iowa Republican Party or the Conservatives or the Tea Party or however you want to designate the folks in this election cycle. And he is wooing and trying to woo those people on that side of the aisle as well as several other candidates. We'll continue in a moment on 1040 WHO Radio. All right, okay. Congressman Ron Paul, I'm getting emails from C-SPAN viewers. One was adamant in boldest letters possible on my iPad, ask Ron Paul if he will end the ethanol mandates. Now, you're in Iowa, and you want to open a vein now, or what?
Yeah, I'd end mandate. I don't like mandates at all. I don't like them on Obamacare. Why should I like them on mandating what producers of gasoline should do? So, yes, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, I think ethanol quite possibly has a role to play. It's not been proven yet. But if you want to be competitive, I'm not against tax credits. I'm for tax credits for everybody or anybody, but they should be given to everybody equally. So maybe if people would look at it that way. But mandates mean that you have to have a certain percentage, and also the protection that all of a sudden if you can import ethanol at a cheaper rate, why punish the consumer? Why push the gasoline price up 5 or 10 cents if you can get ethanol cheaper? That's why the marketplace should determine this. The market always takes care of the consumer, not the businessman, not labor. And if we understood what the slogan means, the consumer is king, then I think it would be a lot easier to understand exactly how the marketplace operates.
It's interesting that the people usually ask the question, get rid of the subsidies. Well, the subsidies, which was a blender's credit, is going away anyway. The mandate to use it was partly because the EPA had to replace the MBTEs with something as an oxygenant, and they chose ethanol. Now, if you get rid of the mandate, what will they to use ethanol as an oxygenant? You got to have. I mean, that's why it was an EPA mandate.
It would be the price that would determine what we use, and if there's a shortage of fuel and you need ethanol. I mean, Brazil uses a lot of ethanol, but they make it from sugarcane.
Yeah, but they are also they're actually importing it from us. It's we don't have to protect them ourselves from that. They have a shortage at the moment in Brazil.
But they do manufacture a lot.
Yes, they do.
And
sugar.
They use a lot more than I think most any other country, and they make a lot from sugarcane.
All right, that's the inside baseball here for Iowans. And thank you for your call or your email, sir. This is Ed. Whoops, I'm sorry. I think I hit the wrong one. Maybe not. Oh, this is Roy in San Bernardino. Good morning, Roy.
Yes, it's an honor to talk to you, Dr. Paul. I'm a seriously ill cannabis patient in California. Voters gave us the right to safe access of cannabis, and yet the Obama administration not only considers me a criminal when I have no record, they've actually taken away my Second Amendment rights, and they give automatic weapons to the Mexican drug cartels. Now, the ingestion of cannabis in itself has never killed anyone, but the laws against it do. Dispensary owners like Joe Grumbine are being needlessly prosecuted.
All right, so just the generic issue.
Yes, and he's dealing with people who enforce laws, and they call themselves compassionate conservatives. I am a physician. I do not think it's part of my compassionate nature is to prevent people from taking something they can grow in their backyard and make them feel much better. It helps people who are on chemotherapy and other diseases, but it should be freedom of choice. And we shouldn't have the federal government overruling state law if we understood the 9th and the 10th Amendment.
So it's time to declare a truce or victory or surrender in the drug war.
We should surrender. It has totally failed. It violates all precepts of the Constitution and the 9th and 10th Amendment, and it doesn't work. And we should allow people to make their own choices. We allow people to make their own choices to deal with their spiritual hereafter and their intellectual life. Why can't we say that people can deal with their own bodies?
Rejoining the WHO listening audience with our C-SPAN audience. Later we'll have some open line time with our audience from all over the country. You're welcome to give us some feedback on what you've heard so far. We're going to have a nationwide caucus this way. Just a few moments remaining with our in-studio guest, Dr. Ron Paul. This is Joel. Good morning. Is it Joel or Joel?
Joel.
Okay, good morning. What would you like us to know?
Well, I just want to say a quick comment on how the Medicaid and Social Security situation is going on right now. Dr. Ron Paul, he said that he'd take care of those situations. It's very understandable for me, but there's a lot of people that are depending from those programs that do not understand what Paul is referring to. I would just like him to clarify that, and I just want to ask him what would he do over here when he gets to Florida, South Carolina, considering the fact that most of these states down south voted for Obama.
It's interesting. Let me build on his question here. You're likely to do very well on Tuesday night. Some say you're likely to win it. If not, it'd be a very close race. Can you duplicate your success here in Iowa in other parts of the country and embellish the Florida issue?
Well, I would have to assume that's a possibility. I don't think the numbers are there. I was able to convince people in my district over the years on this philosophy of liberty and the Constitution, and we're doing very well here. Then the next chore would be in New Hampshire to do very well there, and the message is a powerful message. So I think there's a very good chance that we can do exactly that.
What was his question about Florida specifically? It was a technical question. I'm not sure. Joel, help me understand what your position there, your question on Florida was. Are you still there?
It wasn't Florida.
Yeah. Well, my question is, since there's a whole bunch, there's a lot of Hispanics and blacks in Florida.
Yes. So how can you do and go after the Obama strongholds?
I don't see people in groups. I don't think we should give special privileges or any penalties in groups. So whether they're Hispanics or blacks or whites or whatever, everybody should love freedom, because freedom means we're going to leave you alone and that you can keep the fruits of your labor and nobody's to tell you what to do, and you have equal justice in the courts. These drug laws are so biased against the minorities. If you think about it, it's probably one of the worst things left in racism in our country, because if you look at the numbers, the minorities are overwhelmingly punished by the drug laws and also overwhelmingly punished with the death penalty. Poor minorities are more likely to receive the death penalty than whites.
With just a few seconds remaining, Dr. Paul, what would you like us to know more than anything else?
Well, that liberty is the answer. America is a great country, but we've lost our way. We need to just look to our past, and we can find the answers to many of our problems. Believe in the Constitution, believe in the rule of law.
Thank you, sir.